Today we're going to read about the long hunters that you just watched a video on. So turn with me to page 144 in your workbook. And we are on chapter 20, the Tennessee Frontier. Supply and demand of furs. So as you have learned, furs were very important to the economy. So in the early to mid 1700s, hats and coats made from animal furs were very popular in Europe. As a result, demand for animal furs was very high. The land west of the Appalachian Mountains was home to many animals. So opportunity awaited for anyone who could get animal furs from this region and sell them to clothing manufacturers in the colonies and Europe. So they wanted to move west to get the furs. Fur traders and long hunters. Some people in North America became fur traders. Fur traders traded European goods with American Indians to get furs. Then they sold the furs to Europe or colonists. So in this case, these are people who traded with the Indians, with the Native Americans to get the fur. That's what fur traders were. And then long hunters, they hunted the fur or the animals to get the fur themselves. So some people hunted for furs rather than trading for them. These hunters traveled west of the Appalachian Mountains and hunted for months or years at a time. This is important. These people stayed for months or years at a time to get as many as they could, because if they kept traveling back and forth, it would take them forever. They didn't have planes or cars back then. So people called them long hunters, and they are the ones that hunted for them. So let's go ahead and circle hunted. When long hunters came back east to sell their furs, they also told people about the vast amounts of land available west of the Appalachian Mountains. So not only were they getting the animal pelts, they also realized that there was so much land available and that they should probably move out there because there's a lot of land. Some people thought this new frontier sounded exciting. People became interested in settling this land. So the long hunters helped people realize that there was a lot of land out there. So then people started moving out there. Now we're going to learn about Daniel Boone. And here's a picture of him right there. Daniel Boone was one of those long hunters. As a young adult, Daniel Boone lived in North Carolina. He hunted on the east side of the Appalachian Mountains. Boone heard about a place where it was possible to cross the mountains. One day a guide helped him find where that place was. Daniel Boone traveled across the mountains at the 600-foot deep notch in Cumberland Mountains, which is part of the Appalachian Mountains. This notch created a passage that allowed Boone and other hunters, explorers, and American Indians to get through the steep mountains. This pass became known as the Cumberland Gap. So I want you to picture, if there are all these mountains, okay, everywhere, it's going to be really, really, really hard to climb these mountains and go like all the way up and over. So there just so happened to be this small notch, only 600 feet, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. There was a small gap within the mountains that you could pass through. Nowadays, you can actually basically carve a giant hole through a mountain. But back then they didn't have that technology. So this was a big deal. They could go through this area instead of having to go all the way around or going up and over, which if you have animals with you, like if you're riding on a horse, you won't be able to go up and over the mountain. So Daniel Boone traveled throughout the region west of the Appalachian Mountains. He spent much of his life exploring areas that are now part of Tennessee and Kentucky. In the early 1770s, he lived for a time in a small cabin in the Tennessee area. In 1775, Daniel Boone led a party of 30 woodsmen to cut a wagon road along the trail from east to west. This trail became known as the Wilderness Road. So this area obviously was filled with a lot of trees, so they cut down the trees in order to make their own road through there, or this trail that they made. It crossed the mountains and, of course, went through that Cumberland Gap. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be possible. Near the western end of the Wilderness Road, the men established the town of Boonesboro. In time, Daniel Boone brought his wife and children to live there. He also led many settlers to Boonesboro. The Wilderness Road became an important route to the new frontier. So it was very important. Otherwise, you'd have to go all the way around or up and over, which really wasn't possible. Because, as you'll learn tomorrow, they went in these type of wagons, and those definitely cannot climb mountains. So I want you to take a look at this map, read the captions, and learn more about the Wilderness Road Cumberland Gap area.